Hey, what's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today we're doing a Wharncliffe Wednesday as a response to an open tag from our friend JO Ventures Outdoors. I will tag his channel in the title of this video. If you're not already subscribed to him, definitely do so. You won't be disappointed. He's putting out great content, one of which was a video he uploaded a couple of days ago, an open tag asking to see our Wharncliffe blades. So that's what we're going to do today. He also put together a playlist of all of the responses to this open tag, so I'll link to that in the description of this video so you can check out some of those other responses. One of the channels you'll find on the playlist is Tim's School of Fish, who I recently did a sticker swap with. He designed this sticker himself. Really excellent design. It's now his channel logo as well. But wanted to pause to give him a shout out because he's closing in on the 2,000 subscriber milestone. And if you're not already subscribed to him, definitely go show him some love as well. I'll link to his channel in the description as well. But he's putting out some excellent content, very similar taste to myself. He does a nice mix of modern locking knives, traditional slip joints, and everything in between. And I think there's a very high likelihood that if you enjoy my content, you'll enjoy his content as well. So check him out. But with that said, let's dive into today's video. One thing I did want to note, with previous open tag responses, like for example with the lockback open tag also from JO Ventures Outdoors, I showed all of the lockbacks in my collection. With this one, I wanted to do a bit shorter video, not put 20 knives on the table, have a 30-minute video. So I'm going to try and be a little bit more succinct. So I parsed that down to 6 knives that I think represent my overall Wharncliffe collection very well. I tried to mix it up with 3 slip joints, 3 modern locking knives, and a nice mix of standard Wharncliffe blades and a couple of modified Wharncliffe blades just to show what that looks like. And so I'm gonna try and keep it a little more brief, but overall I think these represent my collection. You wouldn't get that much added value of seeing another 15 of the same blade shape, so kept it down to 6. So we're gonna start off with the Case Seahorse Whittler. Now this one has red synthetic covers, that American flag shield, which is so cool, and you can see it is a multi-bladed knife. So I have a couple multi-bladed knives. For each of those, I made sure to choose ones that the Wharncliffe was the primary blade, also going to be the only blade I show. I do have some slip joints where they have multiple blades. The Wharncliffe is the secondary or even tertiary blade, and figured it made more sense to only show ones where it's a primary blade for this video. So we'll get that blade out of here. Started with this one because it has a very standard Wharncliffe shape of blade with the flat cutting edge, a sloped spine that slopes down to a very thin tip. And so that's what makes it different than like our sheep's foot, ram's foot, where they have a little bit more of a blunt tip and also are going to be a little bit thicker at that tip. This is very standard of what you're going to see with Wharncliffes, with one kind of exception. This one has a very unique handle shape, which I like quite a bit, but you'll see that that blade is not in line with the handle. It kind of slopes inwards, and so that does give you a little bit of a different experience with this, where that tip is very prominent in cutting on certain surfaces. It makes it difficult to access the rest of that blade, and so that's typically true with Wharncliffes anyway, but even more so with this one. With most of our others, you're going to see that it's pretty much perfectly in line with the handle. And so did want to kind of start off with something a little bit different. No half stop on this one either. You'll also see it has a very thick blade stock, but thins out very nicely towards that tip. And so going from one end of the spectrum with the traditional slip joint to the opposite end with the modern locking knife, we have the Spyderco Smock. Really cool knife. This one is the River's Edge Cutlery exclusive. They call the Smockadile because of that coating, but the shape is exactly identical to the original Smock. And so this one has what is called a modified Wharncliffe. And so you can see they went a little bit with like a stylized tip, but that's really still, I'd consider a Wharncliffe. It does have a little bit of that angle that's more Tanto-like, but still have a nice thin tip on there, slopes downwards towards that, where it's really the modified Wharncliffe is the belly of this. You see we don't have a flat edge that you typically see with a Wharncliffe. And so what I noticed as I was preparing for this video, trying to choose which 6 to choose, is that with modern locking knives, sometimes I'll take liberty with that Wharncliffe blade shape, do that modified Wharncliffe. I don't have any traditional slip joints that have that modified Wharncliffe. Not to say that they don't exist, but traditional knives tend to stick to tradition, and so there's a lot less of those out there with the modified Wharncliffe. So did want to show one or two with a modified Wharncliffe. I think this is a really cool example of that, but Moving back the other direction to our slip joints, we have the Blade Form 25th Anniversary knife. This is based off the GEC 34 pattern, which makes sense because this was SFO'd by GEC, and that is their Humpback Congress pattern. And so also a multi-bladed knife, but of course that main blade is a Wharncliffe. This one also happens to be a fingerprint magnet, so did grab a microfiber cloth from Awesome Hank Gear, pretty cool one, check them out as well. But standard Wharncliffe, you can see a lot larger than our Seahorse Whittler. Also in line, which is more what we see more often with these Wharncliffe blades, in line with that handle. Really, really lovely example of this. That antique jigged bone is excellent. You can see this one was serialized. It got 495, one of the higher serial numbers, which is perfectly fine with me, but absolutely been loving this knife lately. I've been carrying it as my secondary quite a bit, so couldn't make a Wharncliffe video without including that, although I do have a video coming up on that one in the next couple of weeks. Also came with their pin showing the pattern 340223 and the Humpback Congress, so thought I'd throw that in there as well. Now, going back to our locking knives, I have a Monterey Bay Knives Mini Old Guard. Picked this one up at a show a while back and ended up being one of my favorite knives, which is surprising because I didn't even plan on picking it up at the show. It just has this silky smooth action that really hasn't been matched in my collection. Now, I know that's not the case for everyone. In the video I did on this one, a couple people mentioned their action wasn't that great, and so your mileage may vary. I did get this one at a show, so had a chance to handle it first and picked out the one that had the best action for me. And so it does have a very light detent, but it's so smooth. It's very, very satisfying. But this one has a modified Wharncliffe that is more similar to a standard Wharncliffe, but still modified. You can see that slope on the spine is more your traditional shape, but we still have a little bit of belly on it rather than that flat edge. So a really cool example of a modified Wharncliffe, and just such a fun knife overall. Now, moving into the slip joint world, we have a modern slip joint this time around, and this is the Jack Wolf Knives Laid Back Jack. Don't think I've done a dedicated video on this one still, which is funny because I have some more recent Jack Wolf knives that do, but this one has appeared in a lot of open tag videos. A lot of that has to do with the covers, these purple Kieranite covers, which I think are absolutely beautiful. Some of my favorite in my entire collection. And the rest of the knife looks great as well. That sway back pattern, again, nice inline standard Wharncliffe shape there. S90V blade. We have a DLC coated titanium bolster and hardware, as well as that DLC coated S90V blade. So also couldn't include or do a video on Wharncliffes without including that one because it's another one that's really been making into my pocket quite a bit. Now, going back to the locking knives, I didn't want to do all modified Wharncliffes for my locking knives because there are standard Wharncliffe blades on locking knives, so chose the Cold Steel Mini Tough Light. And this one is a really cool knife, not perfect. I've done a video on it. My example wasn't perfect, but still an excellent knife. The ergos on it are incredible for such a small knife, and has a standard Wharncliffe shaped blade, a short, chubby one, but really cool, about 1.5 inches or so of cutting edge there, I believe. Finger choil there, which obviously you wouldn't typically see on your traditional slip joints, although that's not entirely true. I think I have a slip joint that has a nice finger choil there as well, but slopes down in our standard kind of Wharncliffe slope, and a nice thin slicey pointy tip there. And so that rounds out my list. I think this, like I said, represents my collection well. There are some that are a little bit slightly different, but not enough to really warrant adding a ton more into the video. Let me know what you think of these knives down in the comments below. If you're a fan of the Wharncliffe blade shape, if you're a fan of the modified Wharncliffe, and anything else you want to comment down in the comments below. If you have a channel or would just like to post your Wharncliffes, definitely do so. Tag JO Ventures Outdoors. Feel free to tag me as well. I'd love to check them out. As usual, I'm going to make my way through that playlist and check out some of the other responses as well, but wanted to get my response out there before I dove into those. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification button. They all help out the channel a ton, so much appreciated if you choose to do so. And as always, I hope you have a great one. Take care.